Hello and welcome back to Let's Just Chat. I have been away for about 2 or 3 weeks, and my apologies. I was out having fun and taking a well-needed break in Guatemala. I will share more about my trip and all the fun and crazy things I did about my trip in the next videos to come in the following weeks. But for now, we're going to talk a little bit more about finances and budgeting. Now, this one was really sparked by my trip to Guatemala. To be specific, I was in Antigua, and I stayed in Antigua for about 7 days and had a blast. When I came back, I realized that it would be a good topic to talk about when it comes to budgeting for travel, but overall, how I budget to have all the fun that I want to have and still meet my financial goals. Without wasting too much time, let's get started. So let's get started with our acronym, Being a Clue. Being a clue here is a lifestyle. You're a walking clue, you sit with people who are other clues, or you can influence others to be a clue. Being a clue is simple. C stands for come and sit, which you're here, or which you find yourself in places where you're sitting and you are there to listen, which is the L, listen with intent. Listening with intent also leads into the U, which is you understand and you acknowledge what you are hearing. The E stands for engage or execute, depending on the conversation or the action item, but you're doing so with empathy. All right? That is what being a clue is, and that is what we live by here at Let's Just Chat. I'll get right into why I budget and how I budget and all the fun stuff about it. Let's go. Why I budget. Number one, I budget to keep sane. Keeping sane financially is one of the reasons why I'm able to look at my budget, my finances, and meet my goals. Budgeting helps me declutter what is in my mind financially. I think about it as journaling, but journaling on a financial side. So when I take my budget notebook, I don't do it electronically personally because I like for my mind and my hand to have a memory of writing things down. Others like electronically, that's totally fine. But back to why I budget. I budget to keep sane. It helps me declutter my mind financially, and it's a form of journaling, but for journaling in the financial language, numbers, terminologies, charts, what have you. Another reason why I budget is to tell my money where to go. Money has ears, money has intentions, money is stubborn, and money is a blessing. But with all of these, you do have to tell it where to go, what to do when it's there, how to behave, and how long it can stay there. Budgeting is exactly that. It gives your money permission, boundaries, and also gives it a lot of room to do what it's supposed to do in your life. If you don't tell it where to go, if you don't give it boundaries, it will run wild and be very, very annoying in your life. I don't know about you, but I don't like that. Okay. That is why I budget. But another thing I want to talk about is what I use to budget. I know I touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. I personally like to use a book. I've used a notebook for a long time, for years, and it's always served me right. Now, for some folks, you might think, well, what if I lose it, or what if I run out of pages? It's kind of like a passport for me. I can refer back and see all the wonderful things that I wrote down, all the things that I thought I was going to achieve, but I didn't, and actually all the things that I did achieve. It is a journal. It is more than just budgeting for fun. It is more than just budgeting because I want to write things down. It is a way to keep track of where I've been, how I've been, and where I'm going. So I love using a notebook. But for some folks, they like using electronic versions, right? You put in the numbers, Excel sheet does it for you, and it works fine. For me, it's a little bit different. Like I said, for me, it's more of a journal than an actual tool where I'm just putting in numbers. So I prefer that. But everyone is different, so choose what works for you. Now let's get into the fun part, how I budget. Now please note that this is just me giving you tools, and you can modify that to fit your situation. Maybe the way I would choose to budget, or I'm going to tell you I budget, is something that will be a little bit difficult for you to do, but you can always modify it to fit you. Don't take this as a law and written in stone, but rather just look at it as a tool that you can modify, things that you can take out, take what you need, leave what you don't. But it's always nice to teach an old dog a new trick. And if you're a new dog, well, here you go. You can modify as you go and keep learning and growing. So how I budget. There are a few steps that I take to start my budget process. It could be for the year, for the month, for the 6 months, whatever. The first thing I do is I write down all my expenses. Now, all my expenses in this case is all the things I spend money on. Bills, tithe, saving, vacation, investment. Everything that my money goes towards is an expense for me, and I list it. So take a sheet of paper, take a notebook. If you're doing this online or via an Excel sheet, then create a column and list all the things you spend money on. The next column is listing the amount of these items. So if you have a car and every month you pay $200 for it, write it right next to it. Food, every month or every 2 weeks, you tend to spend $200. That's what I mean. So you have two columns now. The expenses, the name of the expenses, you have the amount of these expenses, and then you have the frequency at which you spend money on. For example, let's go with the car note. You have a car, so that's the name of the item. The next column is the amount, $200. The next one is the frequency, which in this case is for some people every month. So it's monthly, and you write down every month that's how much you spend on it. Okay, so do that for all your expenses. If you seem to forget some expenses, go through your bank statements, go through any apps that you use to buy things on, Macy's, Amazon, whatever. Go through your email addresses to see what you have receipts. Go to your purse if you're someone who just uses cash all the time. See if you have any receipts there. That's like, oh, I tend to spend money on this, and write it down. This exercise can take a little bit more time. So you give yourself about a few days, maybe even a week. Really, a week is a stretch, but things come to you as you're doing these things. So give yourself a few days, give yourself about a week, and just let it come to you, right? But doesn't mean you stop everything because it hasn't come to you yet. I'm just saying allow it to flow. The second thing I do is I list all my bank accounts, my checking accounts, my savings accounts, my investment accounts. So then I can see where I can plug money or tell my money where to go. If you watch my previous videos, you will know that I have about 20 bank accounts for good reason, and it is the best decision I made years ago, and I'm not going back. You want to watch more of that video, feel free, I'll link it below, and you can also go to my channel and find that video. Anyway, the second thing I do, I just mentioned, is to list all my bank accounts, because I'm about to tell my money where to go. And if I don't tell my money where to go, we already know it's going to run wild. The third thing I do is I list all my goals, because I want to put my goals against my actual expenses and also against the accounts that can hold these goals. Some accounts may not be favorable to me, and I'm not about to do that. So if I want to save, let's say $5,000 by the end of this year, I want to save in a high yield savings account, not just any account that gives me 0.1% interest rate. I want something that'll give me a 3.75. Synchrony Bank is one of them. It's wonderful. Link below if you want to use them. SoFi is another good one. Varo is a good one too. But there's so many banks now that are raising their interest rate. So don't feel like you're stuck in one at all. The last thing I do, well, not the last thing, but one of the things I do is I divide my expenses under 3 categories. Now, this really is the meat of budgeting. So I'm going to go slow, and I want you to pay full attention. Okay? So this is the meat of the budgeting. Dividing your expenses under 3 categories. It will be a little bit more than 3, but let's focus on the main ones. Variable expenses, fixed expenses, and non-variable expenses. We'll start with the most important one, fixed expenses. Again, I'll go over that slowly. You have 3 categories or umbrellas that I want you to divide your expenses under. The first one is your fixed expenses. Fixed expenses is exactly what the word means, fixed. It means it doesn't change, it's not going anywhere, it's constant, and it's always going to be something that you're going to put your money towards. Okay, examples of that. If you're someone who likes to tithe, I'm Christian, I'm a big believer of tithing. When I tithe, it is non-negotiable. I have to tithe. I have to give 10% of my paycheck to my church. I go to Transformation Church, by the way, Transformation Church. Pastor Mike Todd is the lead pastor. Love that church. Anyway, so tithing, for example, is important to me. It is a fixed expense. I spend my money on it, non-negotiable. That will go under that umbrella, fixed expense. Another example is your car note. You have to pay a car note. Most people, you do know how much you're paying every month. Another example is rent or mortgage. Those are non-negotiables. You will be spending money on those, so it goes under fixed expenses. Saving, I tend to put under fixed expenses. So let's say I'm saving for travel. I tend to put under fixed expenses because it's important to me. But for others, they may put it under variable expenses because 1 week I'll save, next week I won't save. Everyone is different, right? So those are a few examples of fixed expenses. So that's the first category or umbrella I want you to divide your expenses under. To the left or to the right of that is your variable expenses. Now this is where it could be the budget creepers because it's variable. Again, it just means it varies. The date varies, the amount varies, but you definitely spend money on, right? Example of that is food. Now, some people may put food under fixed expenses because whether I like it or not, I'm going to spend money. I tend to put it under variable expenses because there's certain months that I know I don't need to budget $200 or $300 for food because maybe I'm traveling or because something else is going on. So I tend to put it under that. Another reason why I put food under variable expenses is because of the inflation going on. And so I'm not quite sure. So other months it will be $300 a month. Other months it's like $500 a month because maybe I'm eating out more or I have events that I have to go out. And so that's gonna kind of hit the budget a little bit different. So that is why I tend to put food under variable expenses. Another thing that can go under variable expenses is personal care. Maybe every month you get your hair done or next month you don't feel like doing so, or getting your nails done, grooming, maybe it's just one of those months and quarter you just don't want anyone to touch your toes. That's fine. But are you still budgeting for it? Because what if you change your mind? Third category is non-variable expenses. And these are the ones that happen once a month, maybe twice a month, maybe every quarter, every 6 months. They do happen, but they're not as frequent as the variable, or they're not as frequent as the fixed expenses. For me, for example, it is hair braiding. I don't always braid my hair every 2 months. In fact, sometimes I can go 3-4 months and not go to the salon. So that means I'm pocketing all the money. But I do know that I will need to braid my hair. So I have to budget for it. So when I do feel like braiding my hair, for whatever reason, there's an event going on, I'm tired of waking up and putting my hair, styling my natural hair all the time, then I'm like, I have money to go pay for that expense. So for others, it could be haircut. Some men and women don't get their haircut every 2 weeks. Some people can go a lot longer. If you have dreadlocks, some people don't need to tighten every 6 weeks. Some people can stretch it for more than that. So there's so many ways that you can look at non-variable expenses. The point is you do spend money on it, and so make sure that you're writing that also down and categorizing that. So I'll go over what I just said. The 3 categories: fixed expenses, variable expenses, non-variable expenses, okay? So make sure that you list or you categorize all the expenses that you listed under these 3 umbrellas or categories, okay? If you're getting confused, that's okay. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that is totally okay. Just play back what I've said. Chat me in the comments below, ask any question, and I'll be more than happy to answer that. Okay. The 5th one is calculating your disposable income. This is another fun part for me. Calculating your disposable income means you're calculating how rich you are at the end of the month. So what is a disposable income? Disposable income means whatever money is left over after you've paid your bills, saved, put money wherever it needs to be, whatever is left over is yours to play with. It is your playpen. It is your playground. It is, ain't nobody care what you're doing with that money because everything else is settled. So at the end of all of this, if you have money left over, however much you do is how rich you are. So if you have $2 left over, we got issues. That means that if anything should hit you that is out of the norm for you, you're going to be knocked out, right? Instead of dipping into your savings, instead of dipping into somewhere else, why don't you dip into your disposable account income, right? Your leftover money. So let's talk about how to calculate your disposable income. Your disposable income is calculated by taking the income that you earn from all your jobs, all your businesses, everything of that sort. You take that amount. So for example, if your income totals $3,000 a month, for example, not every paycheck, the entire month. If your income is $3,000 in total, right? You take that $3,000 and then you subtract out of that your expenses. Remember all the expenses we listed? Yes, you're going to tally all of them up and they're going to give you one lump sum. So if those expenses total up to $2,900, that means you have $100 left over to do whatever you want. Let me take that again. Your disposable income is calculated by taking your income and then you're subtracting from that income your total expenses. So when you look at the fixed expense category, you total that up, right? Your fixed expense, if you have 5 items under fixed expenses and they equal $800, you total it up. You go to your variable expenses, you total it up. You go to your non-monthly, you total it up. That's 3 sums. So you add fixed expenses plus variable expenses plus non-variable expenses. All of that is going to give you that wonderful round number of your total expenses. You minus that from your income, and whatever is left over is how rich you are and how much you can play at the end of your paycheck or at the end of the month. So if that number is in the negative, you need to fix it, right? It's not scary, but it is a bit scary because that means you're overspending in certain places, you're overpaying in certain things, or you're underpaid, or you don't have enough money to cover all the things that you want. So at this point, you have to decide what is a want, what is a need, and then start to recalculate all these things and move money around. All right. So it may mean that for you, if you find yourself in a negative as a disposable income, you're overspending, you need to move things around, you need to stop spending things on certain things, or you do need all these expenses, but your money is not enough. So that means your income needs to increase at all costs. So these are the things that I do to budget. But if you find yourself in the negative, in the red, after you've calculated your disposable income, just recalculate. Just do some adjustments and go from there. There's no need to be scared about it. There's no need to panic. There's no need to be ashamed or feel guilty. It just means you need to recalibrate and then go back to it That's all that is. And when you can't seem to figure it out, feel free to reach out. What I do on the side is I coach people financially. I look over their finances and then I send them on their way. So there are different ways you can get help. I can look at your finances just for a few hours and give you a blueprint, and we can talk about it, and then bye, you're good to go. Or I can coach you through a month or 2 months depending on what you're looking for. Always feel comfortable to ask for help. You are not stuck. You're doing great. Just keep going. We're all figuring this out. But one of the things I love is we're figuring it out. We are not here scratching our heads and saying, I'm just going to try. No, figure it out. And this is one of the steps to do so. Just sit, put it in a book or Excel sheet, however you like, and just keep looking at these numbers, okay? You'll be fine. Okay, well, reach out if you need any help, like I've said. Thank you for spending time with me. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.